Mr. Vitus Azeem, thank you very much for joining us.
You're welcome.
What are some of the key observations you've made regarding the various party manifestos provisions for corruption?
I think about a couple of them have emphasized leadership. That's incorruptible leadership. I think NPP has emphasized that. Power Quesindum has emphasized incorruptible leadership. But when I'm looking at a manifesto that seeks to deal with corruption, some of the issues that I'm looking for, I could not find them there. For example, the Right to Information Bill has become a topical issue. NDC promised in 2008 transparent and accountable governance. The bill has been lying before Parliament for about 2 years, 3 years now, nothing is happening. And they come back and say the same thing, that they are going to get it passed. NPP started it in 2003. They have not done it. They are coming back to promise the same thing. So it is a bit difficult to actually believe in some of the things that they are saying. One important thing that no party has also addressed is political party financing, because that is a source of corruption. And no party has talked about it. In fact, I looked at the manifestos, and there was one party that I could not even come across the word corruption in their manifesto. So does it mean they are not committed to fighting corruption, or it just escaped them? So these are some of the issues that I would have expected to see. Some of them have said about the same thing, setting up one important thing is strengthening institutions, which was emphasized at the presidential debate organized by the IEA. All the four political parties at the debate emphasized strengthening institutions. But in the manifestos, it's not all of them that have emphasized it. I think NPP has emphasized it, NDC has said it, and PNC has said it, but CPP has not talked about it. So that is an issue that we need to look. But then CPP seems to be a bit confused. Because when you are talking about strengthening anti-corruption institutions, Shrike and AYOCO, then in the same vein you say you want to set up an independent anti-corruption agency. It's like a duplication of effort and resources. If you believe in having an independent institution, then you don't need to strengthen the anti-corruption agency. You just take that responsibility away from them. Again, none of them has committed, well, the two main parties have not committed to separating, decoupling the Attorney General from the Minister of Justice. And this is something that we have been fighting for, saying that, look, if you make the Minister of Justice also an Attorney General, he or she has no independence to prosecute. It would always depend on what the executive says. And this is still not, even the Constitutional Review Commission leaves the decision in the hands of the president to decide whether he or she wants to appoint two people or one person to occupy that position. The NPP also leaves prosecution in the Attorney General to delegate, if he or she wants, to the anti-corruption institutions. But the most important thing that they've all agreed is that you need to strengthen these institutions. And in strengthening them, they don't give what they mean by strengthening. If you just say to strengthen them, what goes into it? You need to give them the independence. You need to give them adequate resources. You need to allow them to be able to pursue, to decide what to investigate and what not to investigate, and what to take to court. But beyond that, you need to also say what you will do with the findings of their investigations. Because they have a limit where they can go. And if the executive is committed to helping them, they must be ready to go further. Some cases, the executive has to order the investigations or ask for the investigations. And so, they, like in a manifesto, the specifics are not there. There are no timelines. Of course, they will say this is it's not possible to give these things in a simple manifesto. But then, how do you hold them accountable for what they have promised in the manifesto, for which we have given them our vote? One thing, I talked about political financing. The Constitution requires that they file their returns prior to elections and after elections, including publishing the sources of their funding. They don't do that. And it appears the Electoral Commission is very weak in enforcing that. The normal excuse is that if we do that, no party will survive. And we don't want a two-party system. But Ghanaians approved that constitution. If you insist that they do it, the parties will be compelled to go by it. But otherwise, When a party goes abroad and collects money from certain governments and comes to fund its campaigns, or when a party goes collecting money from state institutions, how do you get to know? So these things are put in the Constitution because they are very important in helping us in the fight against corruption. And these are some of the things that some of them have failed to reflect in their manifestos.
One issue that has emerged in the area of corruption in recent times is the suspicion that in certain instances you have official collusion. One of them has been the judgment debt issue, for example. Although there is very little evidence or no evidence at all to support such an assertion, it is widely believed within the public space, and even those within office think that there appears to be some signals that there possibly could have been official collusion in some of these things. Do you get a feeling, or do you get a sense, or have you seen even those manifestos, that the talk about official collusion and corruption is beginning to find the expression in those manifestos, that anyone is working seriously at attending to this problem?
I don't think that there is actual serious reference to dealing with this issue. Of course, the NPP has talked a lot about the payment of fraudulent judgment debts. But then when it comes to how to handle it, they don't say much. The NDC has talked about appointing a sole commissioner to investigate the judgment debts, and also a commission of inquiry to look at land sales. But these things are not detailed enough, and none of them seems to be looking at the basics, the underlying factors. What gives rise to judgment debts? How do you deal promptly with any judgment debts that arise? For example, people have the perception of official collusion because first you have to study the case and find out whether the fellow has a case or not. If the fellow has a case, you should act promptly to negotiate and come to some settlement without waiting to go to court. Because when it goes to court, it gets out of your hands. You cannot determine how much it will depend on the judge. But then when you go to court, again, you have a responsibility to go and ensure that you defend the state. And so when you see public officials going to court with cases and not following up, or even the president giving instructions that a judgment debt should not be paid, and a minister goes ahead to pay, and the president is unable to take any action against that minister, how would you not be convinced that it has something to do with collusion? There's no evidence, but it's a perception that we all have. And they need to dispel that perception by their actions. And these are not things that are handled in the manifestos adequately for us to be convinced that come 2013, there won't be any judgment debts. Of course, we cannot eliminate judgment debts completely, but a good number of them are avoidable, and that's what we should be fighting for. And I don't think that any of the parties has dealt seriously with it in their manifestos.
There are those also who say that the situation regarding corruption within our system is as a result of our failure to fully decentralize, and that it appears there's too much concentration of political power in the middle, in the center of government. Do you think that a panacea to this corruption issue, or if you will, widespread serious corruption, will be tamed or at least controlled to the barest minimum by merely decentralizing political power?
No, I don't think that merely decentralized political power, especially when you say political power, will necessarily serve as a panacea to corruption. Political power is not enough. You need fiscal decentralization. You need to give the assemblies their monies and give them the freedom to decide how to use them. But you have to put in place other measures. Like some of them have talked about the election of the district chief executive. If the district chief executive feels that he's being watched by his people, and that come 4 years they may not vote for him again, he or she is likely to be more serious, listen to the people, and probably cut down on some of the corrupt acts that he or she may engage in by ensuring that the resources that he gets, he accounts to the people, provides the necessary services and infrastructure that they require. But if you are sitting up there, let's say in a faraway district, the authorities in Accra, how often do the internal audit agency staff go around all the districts? Now we have more than 100, and we have almost, I think, 200 and something districts. They don't, the internal audit and even the audit service, they don't have enough staff to be able to go around this on a regular basis. So you are even hiding there and doing your own thing, and nobody gets to know. By the time they get to know, maybe your tenure would have ended, you would have taken off or something. So that's one thing. Decentralization does not necessarily do that. But the other side of it is that if you decentralize, it cuts corruption in certain areas. For example, if a pensioner comes down to Accra for his pension, and he's told by the Controller Accountant General or other agents that it will take you 2 months to get your pension, unless you give them something. Because you probably have no place to stay, you have no money to feed, you'll probably be willing to part with some money to get them to do it quickly for you to go. Now, if this pension thing comes to your district, you can sleep in your house and come there every day to check on it. So there are various aspects of it. One way decentralization can help in cutting some amount of corruption, and then centralization may also serve. In fact, in some cases, you say that you are decentralizing corruption because of inadequate supervision there, the lack of qualified staff to do the auditing and there. So yeah, both ways. It can, in some cases, it will work. Some cases, it may not work. But then you need to put in place other measures to help it work. But decentralization is bringing government to the doors or steps of the people. And you need to do that. But then in doing that, you need to put in place the measures that will help for it to work more effectively and efficiently.
What are some of the most pressing challenges that you think the next government would be faced with in the area of corruption, and what should they do?
You see, corruption is cross-cutting. If you have good education policies, if you have good health policies, water sanitation policies, and you're not able to deal with corruption, you will not succeed in implementation of those policies. Money that should have gone into education, into health, in water sanitation are going into private pockets. So the serious challenge is the political commitment to deal with public officials that are involved in corruption. Of course, with the private sector, you can talk about awareness creation, but you need to make corruption a very expensive venture. If you know that you can be prosecuted, imprisoned, or money recovered from you, or your house or property seized, you will be reluctant to engage in corruption. But the problem is the political commitment. If you know that you're a corrupt person, you are likely to be aligned to one of the big parties and try to give them some money for the campaigns. So when they win and you are caught, they'll find it very difficult to deal with you. So it requires political commitment. It requires the party, the leader to say, look, you have done the wrong thing. I know you've given me this money to campaign, but you've done the wrong thing. You are making me unpopular. You are punishing the majority of Ghanaians, and you are going to go I will let the law take its course. That is one. But of course, we have some laws that are still outstanding that we've been pressing government to pass and they're not passing. The Right to Information Bill is pending. The Access Declaration Regulations, or now it's called Public Officer Liability Bill and Regulations. These need to be passed because they are anti-corruption tools that will help us to check public officials, check how they are acquiring wealth over the years, so that we can draw the attention of the government to it. And that's probably one of the reasons why these laws are not being passed, because you'll be giving an upper hand, more strength, more teeth to bite. Civil society and the media can now investigate and publish a lot more information than they have access to now. So that is another thing that any government that is determined to fight corruption should do within first 6 months of coming into power. Access declaration. They have told us that all of them have filed their declared their assets. We don't have the list. We don't know the numbers. And we don't even know what they have put into those asset declarations. If you just put this in an envelope and give it to me to keep, you could have put in there that you have 3 cars when you have only 1 car, because you know that during the 4 years you are going to buy 2 more cars and add, or 2 more houses and add. It should be possible, at least for the Auditor General to open them and see. It should be possible to publish them in the newspapers, or at least in the Gazette. This happens in other countries. Why can't we do it if we have accepted democracy as a system that we want to use to rule ourselves? So you need to fill the gaps of the legal framework. You need to strengthen the institutions. And when I say strengthen, not just giving them finances, but also giving them some independence and powers. And then you need, of course, civil society and the media you need to be willing to work with civil society and the media to fight corruption.
When the political parties talk about strengthening the institutions that fight corruption, does any of the manifestos spell out in specific terms what they are going to do? I mean, beyond the usual giving security of tenure and improving the remuneration of officials who work in those institutions, do they spell out specific, clear-cut terms on how they're going to achieve that?
In fact, no party even talks about security of tenure. They talks about giving additional funding, increasing confidence in the institutions. And the NPP has talked about creating a new anti-corruption agency. But these are not specifics. And as I've said about creating another one, yeah, you can create, but then you have to take away the responsibilities from the others and strengthen them. So there's still this problem. The specifics are not there. And I don't know whether there's any source where you can get those specifics. Because it's like a budget, you come in and say, this is what we want to do, and people ask, what are the details? And if you don't provide the details, how can the electorate hold you accountable for not meeting them? For example, NDC has said they will work with Parliament to get the Right to Information Bill passed. They have been working with Parliament for the past 3 years and they haven't passed it. What is the guarantee that they will be able to get Parliament to pass it? But we all know that for some time now, the ruling party has always had majority in Parliament. And that there were bills that were rushed through Parliament without any problem. So if they believe strongly in the Right to Information Bill or Freedom of Information Bill, why can't they get Parliament to pass it? Look at this end of service benefits. It went through. The salaries have gone through without any debate in the public domain. If it's easy to get those things passed, and if these are people that we've elected to represent us and they are thinking of us, why can't they pass these more important laws that we think about? As for salaries, it benefits the individuals. But these laws will benefit the entire nation. Why can't we get them through? Why can't Parliament, especially when about half of the ruling government's parliamentarians are ministers of state who sit at cabinet level to approve some of these bills, why can't they get passed in Parliament?
In your experience with fighting corruption and reporting on corruption issues, if you were to score the various political manifestos on corruption on a scale of 0 to 10, what scores would you allocate to the various manifestos with respect to their seriousness, clarity of policy in dealing with the issue of corruption?
You see, this is a very difficult question because these are just papers that people have written. Somebody could have maybe hired me to prepare that thing for him or her. It does not actually say what I would actually do when I win power. But if you are just looking at the papers, I think the PPP has demonstrated that it has seriousness to fight corruption, and he's even already acting like saying that he will file his returns, tax returns, and declare his assets publicly. NPP has talked about the establishment of the independent commission. In fact, it has been an issue that we've been discussing for some time now. Some people were saying that, look, just strengthen Shrike and you'll be able to do the work. Others are saying that the Shrike already has a threefold mandate and they are not able to live up to that mandate. So take the anti-corruption aspect from them and establish a new body and give them the necessary resources to work. In some countries we have that, Malaysia and other countries. So that is another indication of a commitment if they will really go ahead and do it. So, you see, I don't want to actually give scores, but I think these are two indications that if they are able, if they're serious about doing this.
But on the overall, do you get a sense that the various anti-corruption initiatives that have been proposed in the manifestos across board by the political parties sufficiently speak to the real challenges that we have on the ground?
No, I don't think they sufficiently. They address certain parts. See, one may address one aspect of this, and another will address another aspect of it. But if there was a party that brought all these things together to come out with specific initiatives, it will be a perfect one. Because you can pick the good ones from all the 5 manifestos that I've looked at, and it will be good. But none of them is all-embracing. None of them adopts a holistic approach that would actually succeed in eliminating corruption if that party wins power tomorrow.
Finally, do you get a feeling that perhaps the inertia that comes with drastically proposing policies that would effectively tackle corruption in themselves could be detrimental to the parties that may propose them, because our politics perhaps thrives largely on some of the loose legislation that goes with fighting corruption? Do you get that sense when you read through the manifesto?
Our democracy has been monetized. You need money to be able to contest and win elections. And not everybody can get the money legally. Even those who have gotten the money legally will need additional money to outdo the other parties and win. So you are tempted to engage in corrupt acts. And because you are tempted to engage in corrupt acts, you are afraid that if you allow the appropriate laws to be put in place, one day you or your supporters will be caught. And so you tend to frustrate the efforts to enact very strong laws that can fight corruption. So it's like it keeps going around like that. And that's the problem. That's the inertia. For example, what reason would you give for not wanting to have a right to information bill law passed? It helps you for us to know what you're actually doing, the problems you are facing, the efforts you have made in the past 3-4 years. You don't even need a political platform to come and tell us. When we already have been reading the newspapers, you spend this money for this value of money, you got value of money for putting up this hospital.
Mr. Vitus Azeem, thank you very much for speaking to us.
You're welcome.